Liverpool Football Club spent £446 million in the summer, and they had the perfect start in the league. But all of a sudden, how quickly narratives can change in football. Three losses in a row, and the fan base is in raptures. People are suddenly questioning Slot. People are questioning the summer signings. So today we are having the debate: what has gone wrong for Liverpool? Is it all doom and gloom, or is there still time to turn this ship around? Let's jump straight into it. We've got to start with the defeat on Saturday. Obviously, I was buzzing. Esteval 95th minute winner, absolute scenes at the bridge. But for Liverpool, another late loss. It seems that every game, some way, good or bad, it's a last minute goal. Jamie, we'll come to you first. How rough is this for Liverpool at the minute, and what is going wrong?
Well, it is funny, like you said, the narrative's how it's turned because when we did a video 2 or 3 weeks ago, we kind of said, is the title pretty much over? And I kind of said, look, the form hasn't been great, but they got 5 wins out of 5 in the league. And I think they'd also won the Champions League game. It was as with bad, like not great performances. And I was like, if they turn this around and turn into really good performances and go and win the next 5, that's when you go, this is absolutely theirs to lose. However, the form hasn't changed. The performances haven't been great. And now it's not going their way. The 90th minute winners are going the other way. Obviously, that wasn't the case in the Galatasaray game, but it was in the Palace and the Chelsea, coming very, very late goals in both. Is it all doom and gloom? No. They're sitting second in the table. You've got to remember. That's what the first 5 games of winning them has given them a bit of a cushion. So it's not doom and gloom, but the performances just haven't been to the standard you expect. And when you mention the big sort of players that they've spent on, that's where the question marks get thrown up, is when the defeats happen. That's why the performances weren't great for the first 5, but when you win 5, no one questions you. They go, okay, performance wasn't great, got over the line. Performance wasn't great, got over the line. Now that you lose, that's when the magnifying glass comes out. What's Wirtz doing? What's Isak doing? What's Nketiah doing? And then it's sort of the older players. What's Salah doing these days? What's Van Dijk doing? There's been sort of, talks a lot about what them two are doing, especially. And then you're looking at the new signings as well. So there are question marks over Liverpool. And these 3 defeats, I think, add to it massively. But it's just, you just can't say it's all doom and gloom when okay, 1 win out of 2 isn't great in the Champions League, but you've still got plenty of games to fix that, and they're sitting second in the table. Not doom and gloom, just not perfect, and not looking what we expected, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it depends on whether you're a half glass full or a half glass empty kind of person. Because as you said, the reality is they're second in the table. They're 1 point off the leaders. You could flip that and say, well, absolutely, they're in the title race. There's no concern. There's no issues. But the way, arguably, they've not put in a good performance this season. So suddenly, when you look at it more negatively, there is criticisms to be made to say, well, hold on. And I've seen, I'm not saying this represents the Liverpool fan base as a majority, but you've seen some of the big online accounts start to question Slot already, which sounds absolutely mind-blowing to go, you're going to question a manager who's literally won the title in his first season. What they are saying, and again, this is a bit of an extreme case, but they're saying, oh, well, Slot inherited a squad from a legendary Premier League manager, won the league, and now he's finally getting his own signings in and spending a bit of cash. It's all gone to pot. So again, you can flip the narrative both ways, but you can't ignore the fact that Liverpool have not been good in a single game this season, really. They've not dominated, they've not controlled really any of these games. And as you said, now that maybe luck is a bit unfair, but the odds are going against them. Those 50-50s in the last minute, as you said, are going against them. And now there is going to be, and there should be, a microscope on them. 120, whatever. I mean, the numbers change based on who you ask, but 115 million pounds for Wirtz. He's done nothing. Let's be honest. He's done a couple of nice flicks here and there. He has not done enough. Isak, wasn't even fit enough to play 90 minutes. Again, done very little. Did get the assist, mind you, on Saturday, but again, you've got to question him. I think Ekatike has been phenomenal, by the way. I think he's been their best signing so far. But again, yeah, suddenly the whole narrative's looking a bit negative. Reese, what's your take on what's going wrong at the minute?
I think it's a mixture of things. I mean, I agree. The table doesn't lie. They're second and they deserve to be second, regardless of how late those goals were. But, you know, this sort of thing was creeping in towards the end of last season. Let's not forget, it seemed to be that once the league was won, things started to drop. If we look at the first 18 league games of last season, Liverpool scored 45 goals. Okay, that's an average of what, 2.5 per match. It then dropped. Still respectable, but it still dropped. And this was as a result of a defensive drop off as well. They conceded 20 in the last 15 league matches, which is quite poor. We saw that once they'd won it, standards did decline a little bit. Look, the only people that should care that Liverpool won the league are Liverpool fans. But if you do really want to analyse it with a magnifying glass, the standard of the league was very poor last season. Liverpool, who were unfancied, went on to win it. Great. Now it's their first season where they are the fancied, with the reinforcements they've made, with the players they've kept, because they kept Salah, they kept Van Dijk. Yes, they let Trent go, but it wasn't a club in need of major surgery, in my opinion. But it has been tough. Slot is definitely looking for solutions to fit the new players in, get enough out the wingers, and try and manage more with the depth he's got. He can afford to have Kirkes instead of Andy Robertson, can't he? Or Frimpong instead of Connor Bradley. When I thought that a lot of those players were good enough as it was. Um, Tactically, maybe they've just been sussed out a little bit more. But they are still only, they still are second in the league and they've got time to rectify this. But the issue is you can't go the first four league games scoring so late. You can't. You can do it, stretch it over a season, but you can't do it so late. That does suggest elements of maybe cracks, or it shows a good mentality, but it doesn't. It does show that a better team might punish you on the day, and we've seen that with Palace. We've seen it now with Chelsea. I mean, yes, we can add Galatasaray in that mix as well. It's been a bit of a wobble, but it's best that they have the wobble now. And Slot's got an international break to work out how he wants things to go.
I
Is it?
really do agree that the international break. I know Liverpool fans won't be liking it because they'll be sort of down about it, but the international breaks come at a really good time. You want to just you want to break. You're sort of you're losing three games in a row. You don't want that rut to continue, and players to get a bit of a break. I'm not saying it's a proper break because they're still going to be all playing football somewhere else, but a break from the usual, I think, is actually a good thing. And the next game they got back is United at, I believe it's at home. That's a massive game to get up for. It works out quite well, I think, having the sort of international break and then a massive game. Because if Liverpool don't perform after the international break, that's when I think the question marks have to go on Slot then. Because I think it's a good time where Liverpool can turn it around and then kick on, because it's a massive game. They want to perform well and know they've not been properly on it. But if they don't, that's where I think Slot will get question marks on him. Because I did say at the sort of end of last season, I was like, look, you can't fault him for winning the league. Did a really good job. But now let's see it when it's actually his team and not an inherited Klopp team. Because yeah, they
Yeah,
didn't actually sign. They signed one player the season before, so it's all Klopp's team. So now they're implementing his team, his formations properly, his way of playing. That's where I think the question marks need to be on him if they don't if they continue not to perform.
yeah, and I think the Chelsea game just gone was the real big eye opener about where we are with Liverpool at the moment. A lot is being made about Salah and that he doesn't help defensively and et cetera, et cetera. Look, Salah broke all sorts of records last year. At his age, he was phenomenal. And I predicted a drop off this season because they've enhanced the quality of the team. There's that less reliance on him, less pressure. I thought they were going to probably rest him a little bit more, but they haven't. But if we look at how they played against Chelsea, you know, the way they set up behind him, Chelsea were able to pick out the balls when the spaces he was leaving, because it was easy to do that. So Slot has now got a problem of how he's going to get Salah to work in this space. Is he going to try and drop him more? Is he going to get him to work defensively, or is he going to change the system again? Because Chelsea exploited everything, that Liverpool left glaringly open, and Chelsea didn't let him get away with it. Who else is going to let him get away with that as the season wears on? Not that many.
Yeah, and I will say as well, there's no excuse for that performance because you look at the squads and the only real excuse you can make is, oh, we had Alisson out. But for Liverpool, this is a Chelsea side. Let's not forget, because it would be the point the other way round. We had 8 injuries. Our best player wasn't in the squad. We put in a centre back pairing who Badashil's kind of been frozen out of the squad. Comparing him with Akpom, I don't think they've even played together. So there is no excuse whatsoever for them losing. Obviously, Stamford Bridge, it's always going to be a tough game, regardless of what squad we put out. But this is a concern. Again, Palace, we know, have been phenomenal. So again, that's less of a concern. But, Galatasaray, what I will say is all these 3 losses have been away from home. Is there an element of that? Is it just, they're struggling away from home and at Anfield it'll all be fine? I don't know. But you've got to start to look at individual players. And you guys have mentioned Salah. I mean, Salah, I don't want to blame him, but I do think the change in system has massively, massively impacted Salah's effectiveness. Like the difference isn't Salah for me. The difference is the system, because they're now playing with a striker, whereas before it was a front 3. He's not as far forward on the pitch, so I think tactically that is a concern, especially when the likes of a Wirtz and Isak aren't stepping up. You've now made your best player potentially ineffective. Is probably a bit of a stretch, but Slot has redesigned this system to accommodate the signings, but has made their best player ineffective. And that is a massive, massive red flag that needs to be addressed. Because at the minute, based on performances, I would argue that Salah should be dropped, which was unthinkable last season. So something has to change, but they can't go back to the old formation because you're then going to have 200 mils worth of talent sitting on the bench. So I think it's a real struggle.
But the difference is obviously with Salah is they need to keep him on the pitch, because if they play terrible, he's always the one capable of scoring a winner or a goal in general. So that's why he's not droppable, and you have to try and work it away. If you want all your players to be system based, you can't allow a maverick, a player with that touch of difference. We could argue that Jack Grealish fell victim to that at Pep City. So Slot should find a way to allow Salah to do what he does best. Is how he fills the gap with the rest of that squad is what he's going to do. And it might take someone who has to do the job of 2 players that might do it. But you can't really drop Salah yet when he's their true match winner. Ekitike is great, but Salah is arguably going to be more consistent, isn't he?
I think if you're looking at the Chelsea game, you've got to look at their front 3. And what Liverpool have known for being brilliant at is pressing from the front. And their front 3 was Salah, who isn't the greatest of the defensive ones. He's had better players in the other 2 positions to counteract his defensiveness. Gakpo, he's not great defensively. And then you had Isak, who isn't fully fit. I'm convinced he's not fully fit. He can't play 90 minutes at the moment. And him, causing turmoil at Newcastle, meaning him not having a proper pre-season, he's still catching up to it. Now, whether this international break will help him or not, I don't know. But that front 3 can't properly press. So if they can't properly press, they're not going to be as effective as they was last season when they had sort of like a Jota in there. They've had a Luis Diaz, them 2 can properly press, I think, better than what the front 3 do now. And then when you got Wirtz sort of behind-ish, I know he didn't. It's sort of. I'm not thinking he's the main concern because the midfield didn't need to press like what the front 3 did. So it's it's difficult because they're trying to do a new formation, but they're losing the key attributes that made them so good. The sort of pressing from the front is what I think Liverpool was so good at, that constantly put teams under pressure, which caused them to make mistakes and caused sort of spaces to be open for them to get goals. And now trying to move away from a Salah, because Salah was the focal point. It was, let's get the ball out to Salah, he can do something. The other players can do it, but sort of, it wasn't as good as what Salah was doing, and him scoring the most goals and assists in a single season, I think it was. You have to play to his strengths still. Until he shows you he can't do it, I don't see why you wouldn't play to his strengths. And I think that's what is the turning point of it, where they're now trying to play to an Isak and to a Wirtz that stops your most effective player. So it's whether them two, they're not mistakes of signings, because let's be honest, they're both very good players on their days. But it's brilliant individual players that at the moment are not the right players to fit the team. Is that too harsh to say?
No, I think it's correct. I think look, no Liverpool fan is going to say we spent too much, and as we said, fans are fickle, right? They moan about spending, then as soon as their club does it, they're like, oh, we've had, we love it, we've had a great summer. So there's been a lot of hypocrisy on that. But I don't think, if we ask any fans of any of our clubs, maybe with the exception of City because of Haaland, but would we have signed Isak for any money? Yes, it's not coming out of our back pocket at the end of the day. So I don't think there'll be Liverpool fans regretting well, not less about the money, but I don't think there'll be Liverpool fans regretting saying we shouldn't have signed Wirtz, we shouldn't have signed Isak. But as you said, it has created a problem because Salah's on his, he's not going to have a season as good as he did last season. So on that basis, you can say he has passed the peak of his career, which probably feels really harsh based on what he's just done last season. But when you've spent 400 mil in a window to sign two, potentially three world-class players, you kind of have to accommodate them. Like so to your point, I kind of disagree with you, Jamie. I don't think it's tough because it's not working at the minute, but I think they've kind of had to have some formation change to accommodate the new players. But what we want to understand more of is, has Slot pushed for these signings to go, this is how I want to play? Or is it the signings have been available, so they've gone for it, and now he's had to adapt the system as a result? I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that. But either way, they were champions comfortably last season, and now they're not. Now people have worked them out after a few games. So I don't know. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because they've changed formation and now people are beating them, and they've not been good in any game. So the honest answer is I don't know, but there might come a point where Slot will have to look in the mirror and go, actually, do I need to change this back to what was working? It's a really tough one at the minute.
But if we look at, like, obviously the focus of this new formation and the new players, etc. I mean, like, I suppose that's going to be the overall arching thing, isn't it? That's what the spotlight's on at the moment. I think Slot is right to try and put a new style and new tactics approach, because if he got sussed out a bit towards the end of last season, there's no point carry on the same thing. Um, but also fair play to the Liverpool board for backing Slot when they've won the title. So many sort of teams don't back to enhance their team, so they've definitely enhanced their team. They've, bringing in Wirtz and Isak, for example, the two stars of their respective clubs are now coming in here where they're the big signings, but they're not the two stars. Salah is the star. I don't think this is a Galactico project, but it means there's a lot of pressure on them, but the time they're going to need to settle in and find their feet. I can see why Pep, for example, prefers to keep a small squad or doesn't necessarily go for, if he signs Haaland, he's not exactly going to go and sign Isak, is he? Is his backup. I get why Pep juggles like that. This is something Slot is learning very new. He never had this at Feyenoord, so he's really learning here. People have been very harsh on the new signings. Isak isn't fully fit. I think we all knew that. And I don't think Wirtz has been as bad as people seem to be making out. I think he's been quite effective. He just needs time to adjust. I mean, let's be honest, they've been kicking lumps out of him and he's sort of shocked. German football doesn't play like that. So he's going to take him time to get used to it. And we saw at Chelsea, he showed what he's capable of. It's a formula that Slot has to now get right and juggle well. It's a dream for most managers, but he's got to think about how to put Ekiteke, Isak, Wirtz into that attack with Salah. How is he going to get the most out of Kirkes, for example, and Frimpong? How is he going to keep all those happy? If you'd have signed Mark Gee, which is probably the one key signing he had to make, thank goodness he hasn't had to juggle that one just yet. But it takes time, and I think a lot of people are blaming the new players predominantly, and I think that's a little harsh.
Well, the other thing I said after I think 2 or 3 game weeks was about Van Dijk. And this will feel like we're just piling in at this point because Liverpool lost a few games in a row, so it might be premature. But I've watched Van Dijk in every game this season, and Liverpool fans feel free to disagree with me in the comments, but he's off his peak. Past it, maybe a bit of a stretch, right? He's still one of the best quality centre backs in the world, but he, for me, is not at the levels he has been. And no wonder he didn't ever get dribbled past stats wise because he just runs away from the ball. And I'm sure many people have enjoyed the memes of him from the Chelsea game so far. But for me, again, I know we're just picking holes at this point in the team because they've lost a few, but that's a concern as well because it links him with your Gurhey point, Reese. Gurhey, again, maybe that was more on Palace that it fell through, but Konate now injured. Van Dijk maybe not at the peak of his powers. And suddenly you're picking holes in every element of this team, which is pretty crazy. Um, Again, Kirk is one of my favourite players, and he's just not delivered so far at all. He's looked a shell of the man he was at Bournemouth. So there's a lot to question, I think, at the moment. But I guess the question we're really asking here is, do we think it's doom and gloom, or are we getting a little bit overreactive? And can this team very quickly turn around form and obviously challenge for the title, Champions Leagues, the quadruple that many had them to? Do we think that's still the case?
Well, yeah, 1,000%. This is definitely an overreaction. I mean, like everyone writes Van Dijk off every season, yet the guy's playing at the top of the physical game at 34 years old. Playing it is very, very, at the top level. Players would kill to be in a position like that than he is. He continues to, and he will improve. He's also having to juggle new teammates, new ways of playing, new styles, etc. So I think that's a bit harsh on Van Dijk. But they have plenty of time to turn it around. I know football is a cruel sport these days, and people don't get time, but Slot will. You won't forget what he's done. Their big issue is they need to sort out controlling games. They've had a lack of control, which explains scoring late and conceding late. They need to get that balance, need to get the balance well and juggle that. And that's what comes with the tactics and fitting the new players in. That's going to take, I mean, they could get off to a great start against United, but at the moment, we can't judge what it is against United. It's in the other games we're going to expect to see it. But there's plenty of time to sort this. They're fighting on all fronts. They've got more quality and depth than we've ever seen. I think we just got to be calm. I'm sure Liverpool fans would agree with that. It's all about being calm and seeing what comes out of it.
Yeah, it's definitely not doom and gloom. I know we've sort of piled onto the sort of negative side of things. If you look at the games individually, Palace away, I don't think Liverpool have been too great at that ground. It's a bit of a bogey team ground. It's not one that they've always gone and won games. Like going there, they've cost them the league playing Palace before, so it's not that surprising that Palace have had and turned up against them. Then you got the Galatasaray game. Go into a Turkish game where the crowd are up for it. Like there's atmospheres not like that in the Premier League. Liverpool won't face one like that in the Premier League. It's just sometimes it just didn't fall Liverpool's way. Liverpool had all of the ball, they had plenty of shots, and just one of them didn't fall in, and they lost to a penalty. Then you got the Chelsea game. Now normally, and I think me and you, Jordan, both had it in the Super Six down as a 1-1 draw because that is normally what happens in that game. It's a draw. It's normally 1-1, 2-2, something like that. And to lose in the 95th minute, you go, well, it probably was a 1-1 draw game-ish. But Chelsea have got their last minute chance and they've put it in the back of the net. And if you're drawn to that, I don't think it would have been as a negative as losing 3 in a row. It would have been lost 2, okay, drawn 1. Got to remember all 3 of them are away. It's not doom and gloom. And to the Van Dijk point, I don't know yet because the whole, what you're just sort of saying about the memes and everything's quite funny. him sort of going backwards when a player's running at him is what Van Dijk's always done. He's done that when he's at his very best, and he's done that sort of when he's not had great games. So it's nothing different from Van Dijk in my opinion. But sometimes he'll get punished, which I think you saw sort of at the beginning of the season when it was Semenyo, like Bournemouth when they played him. Semenyo did that. Van Dijk backed off just a little bit too much, and he scored. In this game, you saw him sort of turning wrong side really, but then Caicedo scored an absolute worldie. Like, if you're giving Caicedo that chance constantly in the game, you expect him to miss more than he scores. So I don't think it's any sort of massive problem there. I do agree that they should have probably signed a centre-back. That was more the key position than it's probably more of a key position to sign than a Wirtz. But Wirtz was the big money signing, and he became available, and he said he wanted to go to Liverpool. So that's where I think you put your focus on the big money one, and I think they neglected that one a tad. But Liverpool are still in for all the competitions to win. They should be favourites for the Premier League, or if not, at least second favourites. And the Champions League, even when they've been worse than this, they've gone on to win it. So you can't write them off for anything, even though their performances haven't been great. So I think they're still a very, very good side, and I expect them to easily get Champions League football, and I expect them to still be in the title race, if not win it. So doom and gloom, yes, at the moment, but not after. Just one quick point though is they could be having the curse that City had last season. Because when City had their terrible run, the last game they won was against Southampton. They beat Southampton, I think we won 2-1, and Liverpool won 2-1, and then we lost all our games after. And that seems to happen to Liverpool. So, in my opinion, I hope it continues. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah, I think Liverpool can be absolutely fine.
Yeah, the Southampton curse. I think Russell Martin will be agreeing with you on that one as well. And look, yeah, you're right. The reality is to end this on a positive note, they've played 10 games, they've not been good in any, and yet they're 1 point off the title race, still in the Champions League, and not out of any competitions. So that's the way I'd look at it if you're an optimistic Liverpool fan. But if you're not, we want to hear from you anyway. That is all we've got time for today. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.